Hello, my name is Sabrina Moreland, and I'm one of the librarians at Walter State. And I'm going to show you how to access our databases through the library to find some really good resources for your American literature research. And I'm also going to touch a little bit on some MLA style information that will hopefully also be helpful. So the first thing is just a refresher on access points and what we're going to use to search in the databases. You will very likely have an author and a title, and then some sort of literary element or technique like a theme or characterization or symbolism or something like that. And so in this case, I'd be looking for horror or control or something like that in A Rose for Emily by William Faulkner. So if you have had a librarian come into your class before, this should look familiar to you. If not, you will feel very lucky in having two of your three access points already set up for you. Some of the research you did in Comp 2 in English 1020 used very similar techniques as well. The same technique actually, just sort of a different area of literature. So another example, just to show you, could also be not just a short story, but this applies to novels. So maybe Stephen Crane's Maggie, A Girl of the Streets, or The Turn of the Screw by Henry James. It could be applied to drama. It could be applied to poetry. So all of this just sort of goes along with what you learned in Comp 2. And so we're just sort of growing and expanding those skills while we learn about American literature. So these are the databases that will be helpful to you in doing research for this class. This is just another example of tying in different areas together. You may or may not have used these before. We are going to look at the Literature Resource Center because it is the best one for this type of research. We're going to start there. I'm also going to take us into JSTOR because it is kind of a stranger database. It doesn't work quite the same as the others. And also, I'm going to take you into Humanities Full Text. So we'll look at the top three. But the information that we use to search also applies to the bottom two. So whatever combination of keywords you learn about in one of these databases that is successful for you can be applied to the others. So they all sort of work very similarly as far as your search strategy is concerned. So to get to the databases, we're going to go to the library homepage. So I'm going to pull that up, library.ws.edu, and this first link on the left, I'm going to click on that, and this gives me the full list of databases. And so we could navigate by letter or by going over here and narrowing this down to English. And we'll scroll down to the Literature Resource Center. Now, since this is an online class, you'll be off campus more than likely accessing this, so you'll need to log in using your eLearn username and password. And if you have any trouble logging in ever, just email a librarian and one of us will help you get some different credentials to use to log in. I generally start with the basic search box, so I might start with my author. It's probably better to start broadly because it gives you an idea of how much is in each database about your author. So I'm going to put in Stephen Crane, and you'll see I get over 700 results under literature criticism. And that is the type of material I'm looking for, right? It's analyzing my work of literature. I could go to the right, I could see that my work is included in this database as well. So you could go over here under name of work and see if your poem or story or whatever it is you're looking for is here. And luckily there is Maggie, A Girl of the Streets. So I hit apply after checking that box and I get 15 results. I could also start in that search box at the top with my access point of title. So I could type in, if I could type, and see what comes up. Now, I never use what the database recommends. That always limits my results. So I just type in my terms and go with that. And you'll see this gives me 118 results. This search within feature on the right is really helpful. Here is where I could plug in some of my themes or whatever it is I'm looking for. Maybe I could look for poverty or violence in this story. And that narrows it down to 75 results. And so you could just keep using search within to narrow Or you could employ the advanced search up here when you click on this link, and then you could use these boxes to tie your information together. So I might put Stephen Crane in this first box and leave it keyword, and I might see if the database has anything that speaks very broadly about his idea of poverty or violence in his writings at large. And I want to change this to keyword as well. So I'm sort of taking a slightly different approach to searching. And you'll see there's only 12, so that really narrowed it down. So it just depends on what you're looking for and what your articles contain. So then you look to see if anything seems relevant. And so this mentions Crane's Maggie, so who knows? We go in and we see that poverty is there. There's Maggie, so you can go through and see if any of this information is going to help you write your paper and support what you're saying. If you do find an article that you like, you can email it to yourself over here at the right. You can download it, print it off, or get the hyperlink. And there's also, of course, the citation tool. When I click on that, we're using MLA, so I could copy and paste this into my Word document with the understanding that it might need to be adjusted or edited to make sure it matches MLA perfectly. All the information's there, you just want to make sure all the punctuation and that sort of thing is correct. But that's just a quick overview of this database. And it also gives you, just to add to that, some extra related terms you could use in this database or other databases. So our research starts to really expand and we get more and more ideas for keywords. We're going to look at JSTOR next, and so we go to JSTOR, and you'll notice that the username and password is here. So you want to use WSCC and then Tularuma as your information to get into just this database. And because I'm in here all the time, I'm already logged in, so you want to say Walter State at the top, and I usually just go right to advanced search in this one. You see we have these boxes, and once again I'm going to start with the author, but just to change things up a little bit, we're going to look at William Faulkner, and we're going to start there. So I'm going to do a search. You get lots and lots of results, and we're going to use the information on the left to narrow things down. So I might start by putting in the name of my story this time. So A Rose for Emily could go in this box in quotation marks because it's a short story. And I get 124 results, and I could click on journals, I could click on language and literature, all kinds of ways of narrowing down. I might try one of the themes or something I'm looking for, and I get 89. So same as the other database, using this information on the left to combine your terms is the best way to sort of navigate this, to navigate JSTOR. So when you want to look at an article, you click on the title, and you can sort of see here if it relates to what you're researching. The citation tool in this case appears on the left, and I could copy and paste this into my paper. And again, you want to make sure it's written properly. I also have the option of downloading. And so this gives me the option to print in the PDF of the article, which gives me page numbers, which is super helpful for your in-text and parenthetical citations for your MLA formatting. So that's how you very quickly use JSTOR. Lastly, we're going to look at humanities, full text, and strangely enough, it's not on this page. So I'm going to go back to all subjects and then click on the H's. And then I can scroll down and there's humanities full text. So this talks about literature, philosophy, religion, art, all kinds of things in the humanities. This time I might look for Henry James. And like I said, I always like to start with an author just to see what the database has. So if I look up Henry James, this looks like the ebook collection. This looks like Academic Search Premier, if you've ever used that. The results are listed here. We have 500 and some results. And so we want it to be literary criticism once again. We could maybe click on academic journals here to narrow it down. And we want to avoid reviews because we're not looking for, criticism of a movie version or a play or something, an adaptation of it. So we want to be careful with that. We can expand subjects to see if this gives us any help. And here is the name of my story. So I could click on this little box for this novel and it would give me 19 results. I could plug in the turn of the screw in the second box. I could try and see if there's anything very broadly about Henry James and death, and there are just 12. So same thing with researching, um, in those other databases, it all ties together. The same, ways that you construct your search strategy applies to all of them. So depending on how you search, this one might be a good one. Again, with this type of research, you don't always get the title of exactly what you're looking for. There might be some really good information within an article that says review. So you really want to be careful. You could go back, because this is real research, and redo your searches. A lot of times it's good to backtrack and do that. So I might try the name of my novel this time and see what happens. So that gives me more results. That's really a lot better. So I could go in and see what this article's about. It's an academic journal. It gives me the PDF of this. On the right, there's all kinds of tools I can use to save this article just like before. So there's a permalink on the right. I can email it to myself. I can print it off. I can even drop it in my Google Drive if I want to. All kinds of good ways of keeping the article. And so that's how you research in the Humanities Full Text, how you research really in all of these databases. So MLA is a big part of this, of course. You want to document where your stuff comes from properly, and chances are you've used MLA before. So just to refresh you, you can go to the MLA LibGuide on the Walter State Library page under Citing Your Sources. Purdue OWL site, super helpful. Perhaps you have purchased or rented a handbook. So all kinds of good places to go, as well as asking a librarian. Now, you will, of course, have your Works Cited page, and you will have your parenthetical and in-text citations. Just some things that are extra I wanted to point out is if you're using your textbook that has the story in it, you're going to be quoting from an anthology or a collection. So there's a certain way of doing that. This is just an example of using Poe's story from a Comp 2 textbook. So you would have your Works Cited entry following the proper formula for a multi-edition collection. And then you would have your in-text and parenthetical citation examples. So Poe wrote the story, Masque of the Red Death. Because I include his name in the text, the page number could appear here. Using the same quote, if I do just a parenthetical citation, then Poe 433 would appear in my parentheses at the end. Now, this is from a textbook, but the story is taken from the textbook. So Poe still writes the story or your primary source that you're quoting. The secondary sources are going to be those articles that you use. And so this is just a JSTOR article about Poe's writing. And again, in text, I would include the author's name. Garrison, right, wrote this article about Poe, and it came from 146. So in text, the author's name appears, 146. And then if I'm doing a parenthetical citation, same setup here with this quote, I'd put Garrison, the author's last name, and the page number in my parentheses. So this sort of illustrates how in-text and parenthetical are slightly different, but you still have to document using what you provide in the Works Cited page. So that's the Works Cited entry, and this is what will look like in my paper. Also, this is just a quick, I'm not going to go into this because we're running out of time, but just take a look at these slides. Your instructor will share them with you. If there's repeated sources, so if you're using more than one source in a paragraph, there's different ways of doing that. So this one's just Poe being quoted in this paragraph, but here I use both Poe and Garrison. So if it's just one, you can only write the author's name one time and it applies to the rest of that paragraph if that's the only source you consulted. And then lastly, indirect sources. So sometimes we see a lot of quoted by other people going on in the sources that we use. So this is how you would do that. So you would put quoted in, abbreviating it here. And this is just an example of somebody else quoting actually Henry James, so quoted in Garrison 136. So that just a couple quick